Welcome to the Dental Forecast. Join Dr. Craig Packer, Dr. Joe Field, and their incredible guests as they expand on the Gen 4 commitment to usher in the next generation of dentistry. Stay with us as we delve into cutting-edge techniques and discussions shaping the future of dental care, right here on the Dental Forecast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Dental Forecast. We're so excited today. I'm here again with my co-host, Dr. Joseph Field. I'm Dr. Craig Packer, and we have an amazing opportunity today again to have an incredible guest joining us for our forecast today. Joe and I are in a mastermind group together with some other doctors, and we had this amazing guest join our mastermind group. And when it was over, we thought, okay, we got to do a podcast episode with him. So, Joe, I'll let you introduce your friend and colleague that you introduced me to for the podcast today.
Yeah, and so I met Justin probably like 5 months ago. I feel like we're best friends, Justin. So. But
I love it.
It's interesting, all the connections that have come since. And I learned about you through another dentist, and he and I were just kind of talking about, investment strategies and creating cash flow, et cetera. And he's like, hey, have you ever heard of this book called The Lifestyle Investor? And I said, no. And so right away I went and got it on my Audible and started listening. I listened to that whole thing from that time. I got it through the airport, through my flight home from this meeting, et cetera. I'm on my third time going through it. So our guest today wrote this book. It's a best-selling book called The Lifestyle Investor. He also has a very successful podcast, also has an incredible group of like-minded investors. We call them Lions, the Lions Investment Group, and they're amazing, all, again, designed around this lifestyle investing. And as we get started, Justin, my question out of the gate to you is why? And the reason I say that is you've done it, right? You've created your lifestyle investor model, right? You've done the work. Why aren't you just on a beach somewhere? Why aren't you just out playing golf somewhere? Why do you spend so much time, effort, energy? Why are you so giving of your time to educate and teach people like us? Why?
Great question. Thanks for having me on your show. Joe and Craig, it's good to be here. So to answer your question, I have taken the time away. I've lived a life of, quote unquote retirement, and it's really boring. I remember, I think it was in 2017, we, took a year off and just traveled the world. And that was an amazing, epic experience with my family. But I was trying to figure out what was next. And I was committed to not working for a year. I mean, that was like, I was going to do that. And I got real antsy at about 5 weeks. I got real antsy again at about 5 months. And then I got through, and by the time, a year was up, I was ready to do something. Like I wanted to charge, but I'm glad that I basically said no to everything and yes to my family and yes to like just finding time and space to figure out what was next, because that's where I figured out this whole journey with the lifestyle investor. And at that time, I didn't even know it was in my head. I was journaling every day, kind of capturing my thoughts while we were traveling, and I kept finding these recurring themes that every single day I would read in some capacity. I love to read. I love to learn. Sometimes I would take a course. Sometimes I would, listen to a podcast. But I was always learning. The second thing is the more I learned, the more I wanted to teach people. So every time I learned something cool, I would email some friends like, hey, you should check this thing out that I just read or that I just listened to or that I just learned. Here are my takeaways. What do you think? The third thing is I just love relationships and I love people and I love coaching people and teaching and sharing anything that I've figured out over the years that can help others shortcut. And then number 4, I really do just enjoy doing deals. Like I like, I find doing investments very fun. Especially now as I'm a lot better at it these years than I was in my earlier years. And so, really the lifestyle investor evolved from that. It was, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I don't have to work, but I get to work. So if I get to work, what am I going to choose to do? And I figure the best thing for me to do is to be around people, to be teaching as much as I can, to be in a place where I can also learn and attract really high quality people that we can do deals together and tax strategy together. And then we can travel the world and have fun. I'm just a big believer in the fact that I want to do business with people I want to do life with. And it's all, one tightly knit group. And that has served me very well. And that really has been, That's the impetus of starting the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind, and it's also why we keep it a small group. Why we've had a 100-person tribe with a wait list for 5 or 6 years, and although we did just open it up this year, and we're going to actually go to 125 based on everyone's desire to have just a handful more like-minded people.
Well, man, thank you for doing it. On behalf of hundreds of thousands that you've greatly impacted, we're glad you did it. So I'm glad you got bored.
Well, I would have never guessed that it would resonate the way that it did. So that's the real blessing for me is all these ideas were in my head. I didn't even know if anyone would buy a book. I was like, I could talk, 100 or 200 of my friends into buying a book, I bet. But, beyond that, I don't know. And for my podcast, I'm like, I don't know if anyone's going to want to listen to me. I mean, I find this interesting. I don't know if anyone else is going to find it interesting. But to a certain degree, it was just right time, right space, right fit. And, the book is now it's top 1% of all books ever sold. And all the proceeds go to fight human trafficking, which I'm proud of. It's a #1 Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller as well. And it just went viral on social media. And I think maybe some of the byproduct of that is the podcast has become a top 1% of all downloaded podcasts in all categories. And so I would have never in a million years guessed that any of this content would be this interesting or this popular. But I'm flattered and excited, and it keeps me inspired to keep kind of creating more content.
Our audience is a bunch of nerdy dentists. So Joe and I are in the bottom 1% of downloads for our podcast, but we do have some dentists who are interested in hearing what we say. And so that's been kind of fun. So since we had our mastermind call, I've done some looking and researching and watched some of your podcast episodes. And you even were kind enough to let me subscribe to emails that come, and I read these emails. And so I think it's been a big help to me. And so I think we're really excited to have you come and talk to us. And one of the first things I wanted to ask you, you probably know this, but dentists spend a lot of time, a lot of mental energy on gaining the knowledge that we need to do what we do on a day-to-day basis. And it's a high-stress profession, and we focus so much on our clinical skills and our CE and all those types of things. We don't learn anything about finance in dental school, and most dentists are terrible at finance. So this is going to be really helpful for us. But I guess the question I'd start with here is, what advice do you have for dentists who are successful in earning, their money as they do their dentistry every day, but are kind of trapped, by our schedule? Passive investments, passive income is not what we're good at. We're good at making money when we're sitting at the chair. So I'm excited to kind of have you maybe help us. What are some of the things that you've seen dentists do to be more successful in having some passive income?
It's not all that different in terms of kind of like the golden handcuffs from a lot of other professions. We have several dentists that are members of the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind. And so I have gotten a good glimpse of what it looks like and kind of gone down the rabbit hole of what hours look like, what does the typical business look like, what are the financials. So, I mean, I have a decent understanding. So it's kind of fun to talk to a group of dentists because I do feel like I understand your business. My next door neighbor for the longest time was and is a dentist. And then one of my really good buddies who I've kind of helped pivot from just being a dental professional to being more of a lifestyle investor. He has two practices here in Austin, and he's an awesome guy, but I love seeing that he's building some of his passive income on the side. And so, I can talk about this because, I guess the thing that I want to share is for most people, for most professions, they don't teach you the financial stuff. They don't teach you how to invest. And so you either outsource that to someone else and you just hope that they're really good. And it is hope, right? I mean, based on the data, only 5% of money managers outperform you investing in the S&P 500, right? So 5%, that's over the last 15 years. Over the last 30 years, it's less than 1%. So the odds are really good that if you outsource your financial well-being to someone else, you're A, going to pay more, and B, they're going to perform worse than if you just did it yourself. And so I think when I had that realization, I felt very taken advantage of. The statements were kind of manipulated and focused on maybe not the real numbers, more on average numbers than actual numbers. And so I had a wake-up call that I cannot outsource my financial education to anyone else. That's something I have to own, and I need to know enough to not be kind of taken advantage of. And that's when I just started kind of creating like a self-study course where I'm going to learn and I'm going to listen to podcasts. I mean, back then there were no podcasts. So, I mean, I would just read books and do some researching online. Now I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I mean, it's built into my schedule. And I think that any professional in any industry, certainly dentists, can find the time to do that, even if it's on the drive to and from work. Even if it's on a lunch break, even if it's just carving out time. So, I mean, that's one category. The other one that, we could really go into is just partnerships and buying your time back, finding other people that can help so that you're not the person that is on the hook for everything, really trying to separate your time from your money. So I think both are actually really important and both are really applicable. So that'd be where I'd start.
That's great insight. I'm actually I didn't realize you had that much experience with dentistry. That's even better. It's funny. One of the things when we get together as dentists at conferences and things like that, and we love bringing up this topic, often we'll talk about real estate or, alternative investments, et cetera, which can be dangerous, right? But it sounds so exciting for us. What's someone that doesn't have a lot of experience with this, but has good income coming in to deploy? What's the first step? Like, what's a good first move to learn more about those two industries in particular from an investment standpoint?
Really, I could answer it almost the same way, where it's like, hey, just put one foot in front of the other and learn something each day that's going to help you get better. I mean, let me actually unpack this and give you the why. The reason why you want to learn how to invest in alternative investments is because that is, even though you may believe that it is alternative to the stock market, meaning it's a small percentage of your net worth, single family offices, aka the billionaires in the US, have generally 60% or more of their net worth in alternative investments. I just was speaking with someone that runs the family office. I actually am going to not say names, but runs the family office of a very well-known entrepreneur that everyone would likely recognize, who is an owner of a pro sports team. And hopefully that's enough to give a little color, but not too much color. And this person has 0% of their net worth in the stock market. And this guy's a multi-billionaire. I'm not against the stock market. I just like to copy the wealthiest people out there. And the billionaires generally only have, 15 to 25% of their net worth in the stock market. And the vast majority of it is in alternative products, alternative investments like private equity, real estate, and private credit. So to get back to the answer of your question, I would just start studying those things. I would start, to me, the best way to learn is to get around people that are doing the things that you want to do and that have the know-how on what you want to learn. So I think peer group really matters, and I think mentorship really matters. And so I've always been a proponent of paying for my education. A lot of people, their education stops when they're done with college or stops when they're done with, dental school or whatever it is. I want my education to go on every year. I want to be a student every year, and I'm going to pay for access to people, access to education, access to wisdom, and I'm going to pay for the groups that I think are the most aligned to me. And that's why I'm part of so many different masterminds, is because that is, to me, the greatest investment I can make.
Do you feel like the rates being high in the economy scares that people, it's been a panicky few months, here in early 2025. And so I think that some people are like, well, I'll wait for the rates to come down, or I'll wait for this, or I'll wait for that before I want to try anything, as far as any commercial real estate or even, I guess, residential type real estate. What's your opinion on the market and the timing, and how have you seen things happening with all the people that you interact with?
A good deal is always a good deal. So I think that you just have to weigh the numbers. So are you going to find less good deals right now than what we did for the last decade, when it was super frothy? Yeah. But I also think a lot of those people overpaid, and they're going to realize the pain of that mistake. Now, the banks just keep kind of pushing this off and giving a little bit more time, adding an extra year, an extra couple of years, whatever. At some point in time, there's going to be a reckoning. But that doesn't mean that there aren't good deals out there. There are always people that need to sell, and there are always distressed deals. There are always people that didn't plan for life or finances properly, and they're willing to take a lesser amount than what maybe the product or the asset is worth. So there's never a season where I'm like, I wouldn't be an investor or I wouldn't be a buyer. There's just, that season doesn't exist. I think you have to work harder today to find a good deal, because I think there are a lot of people that are irrational about the value of their assets and don't realize that things have reset or that interest rates change, asset values, what people will pay for them. So I think if you can find, and also we're entering into what is touted as the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world. You've got estimated anywhere from like $85 trillion to $105 trillion is going to change hands from baby boomers to millennials in the next 5 to 20 years. So that tells me there's a lot of people that are going to be selling assets. You can get great deals from people who are looking to sell assets. I bought a mobile home park from someone, and he just had a number, and that was his number. He didn't care what it was worth. He had a number in his head, and if he got that number, he was going to sell it. And when he told me the number, I was like, well, yeah, I'll buy it. It was probably half of what it was worth. I've had people on the opposite side of that are like, I want $10 million for this asset when really it's only worth $5 million. And I have to, level with them. Like, I'll only give you what a bank will give me to buy it. But this guy was just like, nope, that's it. Take it or leave it. And I said, I'll take it. And that was a guy who was looking to retire. He was well into he was probably in his late 80s, early 90s, and that was a great asset. And that was during a time when interest rates were higher, and you could have made the argument it's hard to find good real estate right now, or it's hard to find good businesses right now.
Well, Justin, you talk about this concept of buying your time back, right? What are the common mistakes you see from these high income earners of healthcare professionals that they make when they're trying to accomplish that?
I just think a lot of people live life on default, and they just go through the motions. They go to meetings. They are very reactionary in their way of doing life, instead of just pausing, taking time, being proactive and laying out your calendar and kind of what you want things to look like. I think it's just easy to get in a routine. I think it's easy to just settle. And I think it's hard to leave a good thing or to change a good thing. And I think people become a slave to the business that they've built very easily, very commonly. I think people become a slave to the money that they make. And it really limits optionality. That's really what I believe. And I think the more options we give ourselves, the better. If you can figure out how to cover your life's expenses and passive incomes, I guarantee you'll make different decisions, both professionally, but also personally. Like the game changes, the script changes. So I think it's really important to figure out the cash flow game. What does it take to truly buy your time back? And we're talking about buying it back financially. We can also add in buying it back, building out systems, utilizing AI, hiring, executives, or at least an executive assistant or a virtual assistant. Like, there are ways you can buy it back. There are responsibilities that you can basically shift to someone else in a qualified manner. But if you really want to crack the code, most people aren't able to make their big moves or their big changes until they solve for their finances. And I guarantee you, if you make all you need to make to cover your life, and let's just even say cover your business on top of that and passive income, I absolutely guarantee you'll make different decisions in your business that will likely yield greater returns.
Do you see, as people are building this, do you see lifestyle creep coming into play and moving those goalposts for them and making it something that's almost unattainable?
All the time. I mean, I think first off, most people aren't even clear what they need or what they want. The ones that are clear, you see the goalposts moving. It's like, hey, once I make $1 million a year, then I will have made it. But once you make $1 million a year, you're like, well, I don't feel like I don't feel different. So maybe I need to make $5 million a year, or I need to exit my company for 5 million or 10 million or 50 million or 100 million. But I'm just telling you, when that happens, you're still like, you're going to feel great. I mean, keep in mind, in the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind, we've had over 50 people have exits in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And every single one of them will tell you, it was really cool to see that number show up in my bank account. But then and it's different for each person. It was like days later, weeks later, a month or 2 or 3 months later, it's like, okay, what's next? Like, that doesn't mean anything. I'm bored. What's the next thing? So money isn't going to solve, like, a lot of people just think like if they have a lot of money, it's going to solve things. It's not. Rich people have a lot of money. Wealthy people have a lot of time. And I think when you control your time and you are spending it the way that you want, you're working in a way that aligns, that fills you up with people you desire to be around, you're spending your free time with people you want to be around, everything changes. And really, like, that's the currency that I think is the most valuable today. But most people don't realize that. Most people are just chasing money, chasing the next dollar, chasing the next promotion or the next thing. And lifestyle creep, to get back to your actual question, that is real. It happens to most people. And generally, I think people are really disappointed when it happens to them, when they find themselves in a situation that isn't very liberating for them.
I feel like in my situation, Justin, and maybe this is normal, or maybe it's not. I'm risk averse, and so because of that, I always think, well, when I have enough cash built up, then I'll invest in this, or when I have enough cash to, get into real estate, I'll buy something when I have that, and that just, there's never enough. The cash that I'm building up doesn't equal the change in the increase in the cost of the real estate, right? Like, I'm not keeping up with that. And so I know some people are different. They're willing to go out and to look for funding and financing and things for things like that. So do you have any kind of opinion, I guess, on situation like that, where someone might be kind of nervous to really put themselves out there in case it might fail?
This might be a very funny answer, but I'm really risk adverse as well. And that's why I don't really invest in the stock market. So, I mean, if you look at the last 100 years, the stock market's performance is at 9.5% before taxes. If you look at that same 100 years, alternative investments perform just under 15%. You're talking over a 50% greater return in that asset or in those asset classes than in the stock market, with better tax mitigation tools or depreciable assets. I mean, there are tax advantages to many of these types of investments. So it ends up being greater than just 50%. And anytime you have PE ratios that are way out of whack, like they are right now, the performance of the stock market tanks. And so, in a season where you've got PE ratios in the 23 to 27 range, I mean, if you look at the past century, I mean, that 9.5% is generally when PE ratios are at 16. So they're so much higher right now. So you're generally looking at like 1 to 6, 1 to 7% performance. And by the way, this is all stuff from Howard Marks. But you take a look at alternative investments in that same season, and now you're getting a 2x, a 3x, a 4x to that performance. So to me, it's funny that you're like, hey, I'm risk averse, so I'm not doing those. I would say the same thing. I'm really risk averse as well. That's why I don't put very much money in the stock market.
Another point, Jess, I'm sure you've run into this with not just dentists, but others. Like, because we are higher income earners, right? And we have disposable income for investing. I feel like a lot of times we're a bit of a target for people. And I've certainly, invested in things that I'm like, oh yeah, this seems like a good idea. And it was not, and it did not work well. And I know, like, I could answer this for you and say, yeah, that's why we have the group we have to vet deals, et cetera. But in a quick answer, like, what are ways that we can protect ourselves from, deals that could not be in our best interest? Like, how do we vet deals as we're being presented them to us?
I love this topic, and I do a lot on this. I built a vetting deals course with the guy that I invest with, and does a lot of our internal. He's our investment analyst for Lifestyle Investor, and so we do a ton of deals, and he's incredible. So check out our vetting deals course on that. But yeah, it starts with the jockey. I mean, the jockey is more important than the deal, and their track record matters, and how many deals they've gone full cycle matters. I think it's important that you build out your own investment criteria so that you learn what it is you want to invest in and what it is you don't. This should be unique and different for each person. I think it's important to get clear on your goals, just in general, so that you can get investments that will align with those goals, that will also align with your investment criteria. But the goal here is you're saying no more than yes. So let me just say it this way. Entrepreneurs, and I'm going to put a lot of dentists in this category because a lot of you have gone and scaled your own companies, right? And even if you're not scaling your own company, you're probably a sole proprietor or whatever, right? So entrepreneurs are optimists. They're eternal optimists. They find the good when the stats don't look good, they don't count themselves out. They're going to find a way to make it happen. They'll put in the muscle, the time, the whatever, right? To be a good investor, you have to be the opposite. You actually have to be a pessimist. You have to enter in and say, this is a horrible deal. Like, you can't start by saying, this is a good deal, let me prove otherwise. You have to start with a no. This is a horrible deal unless I could prove otherwise. And I think just that simple, flip is magical. Like that, if you can say no more than yes, you're going to do well. And then you've got to find the right groups. You've got to find people that know what they're doing, that can teach you it, or, take courses or get in communities, peer groups, masterminds where people know what they're doing, that can come alongside you. But the reality is, like, think about it this way. There are literally hundreds of millions of companies worldwide. Okay. Hundreds of millions. There's probably 100 million in the US, if not very close to that, just in the US. We could even just call it 50 million in the US. Okay. The stock market, the New York Stock Exchange lists only 4,000 companies or thereabouts. By the way, 25 years ago, it was 10,000 companies. It's becoming harder and harder for companies to list. It costs crazy amounts of money, like 40 million bucks, crazy amount of time, 4, 5, 6 years. And then the standards and the hoops you got to jump through to stay listed are just crazy. So that number just keeps dwindling. But the fascinating thing is the vast majority of people in the world, or at least in the US, are investing in literally 0.016% of the total number of companies that are out there. Like, think about that for a second. And this is why I like alternative investments. This is why I like, now, are all alternative investments, good? No, there's a lot of bad actors out there. So you need to do your homework. You need to learn how to do it. But there's a lot more opportunity there than in the stock market, especially for outsized returns.
So that reminds me, so when you mentioned it earlier, you mentioned real estate, private equity, private credit. Could you break down, do all of these investment opportunities or alternative investments fit into those three categories? Or can we get more specific on what lifestyle investing really could be for a dentist who doesn't know much about anything other than buying Apple or Google or something like that?
Yeah, well, let me just give you the playbook. This is what the single family offices do. This is how the billionaires invest their money. Usually, their private equity is 30 to 40% of their net worth. All right. Their private credit is 5 to 15% of their net worth. Their real estate is generally 10 to 20% of their net worth. Maybe if they're a real estate professional, it could be higher, 25 or 30, but generally we see 10 to 20%. Stock market, I've seen it as low as 5%. Usually I'll see 15 to 20, 25%. So if you look at it as like each category has its place. It's not that one thing is necessarily better than the other. Although for me, I'd rather go with the thing that has a higher historical return and better, I guess, tax optionality, right? I want tax, preferenced or tax advantaged investments. So I tend to, default to more alternative investments. But we could also talk about crypto, specifically Bitcoin.
I know you like crypto, yeah.
Yeah. And really, like, I love Bitcoin, and I think it's great to, it's nice seeing BlackRock, the largest wealth manager in the world. They manage 13 trillion in assets. These guys, Larry Fink said that the average person should have at least 2% of their net worth in Bitcoin. And at Davos, at their most recent meeting, he said, realistically, people should have up to 5% of their net worth. So I would put that under alternative investments most certainly. And that's another, 2 to 5% that you could allocate there. We could talk about oil and gas, and that's usually 1 to 2%. We could talk about precious metals, usually around 1%. We could talk about, other, I guess, let's call it collectibles. All right. So maybe rare artifacts, watches, wine, bourbon, whiskey, tequila, documents, artwork, cars. So all those would fall under collectibles. And generally that's about 1 to 2% of the billionaire's net worth. And so it's not about maximizing the return you get on all of your money. It's about allocating it effectively across a bunch of different asset classes so your blended return is good no matter what the season is.
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful. And I noticed you didn't mention in that list, like whole life or something like that. Would you consider that to be an investment, or is that more of a strategy?
Yeah, I consider it. What I didn't mention is, I probably should have thrown fixed income in there as well. It just slipped my mind. But, generally you see that at about 5 to 15%. And that would be where whole life insurance would fit
in there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You could have treasuries in there. You could have, bonds in there. So, yeah.
Okay.
And could you...
and cash. Sitting in cash is generally 5 to 15% as well. Yeah. Right now, we're seeing it more 5 to 10%.
Real quick, since Craig, you brought it up, Justin, the whole life concept was one thing from your book and subsequent podcasts I've listened to that really was a mind bender for me, because I've heard so long that whole life is kind of a scam. They're high fees, the only winners are the brokers, et cetera. But you see it differently. Could you just spend just a minute kind of sharing that thought process?
Sure. Well, I mean, if you just look at it this way, you've got there's this big saying from people that are much more focused on getting out of debt than building wealth. They'll say, well, buy term and invest the rest. But the reality is term policies, the stats, somewhere between 97 and 99% of term policies never pay out. They expire or they lapse. So to me, that's like renting. And then whole life is permanent. It's under permanent life insurance. And so there's a guaranteed payout. It's just a matter of when. And I like knowing that at a minimum, if anything ever happens to me, my family's taken care of. If something happened to me and I didn't have that in place, it'd be like me just leaving in the middle of the night, without saying a word. Like that is what it would be like, right? Not that anyone's intentionally trying to do that, but I want my wife to have peace of mind. I want there to be assets for them to do whatever they need to do. So that's all just, more on the insurance side. But there is a living benefit to it where you can turn it into your own bank. So banks have very high risk. Like banks, most people don't know that their solvency ratios are super low. They're really like scary, anemic here in the US. And so that's why we've seen so many banks failing over the last number of years. You don't see this with insurance companies, and especially the four biggest insurance companies or the 10 biggest insurance companies, because they have to have enough cash on hand. If every person that they had insured died at the same time in some catastrophe, they'd have to have the cash to be able to pay it all out. So it's a very safe place to keep money. So to me, I'd rather have my money there. That acts as my part of my fixed income bucket. And then I can borrow against it. And I can make other investments from that money. So I can borrow against my whole life policy. Let's say I've got $100,000 in my whole life policy, or $1 million, or whatever number you want. Well, let's say I borrow that $100,000 and I still am going to get a dividend on this money. I'm still going to make a return. I have a guaranteed contractual return. I have a minimum of 4% I'm going to make no matter what, but I'm likely going to make the dividend, which will outperform that minimum. So no matter what, I make money here. Well, now I can invest the same dollars in another deal and make money there. So I have the same amount of money, but I'm taking it and using it in two different places for two different returns. So it's compounding my returns. It's juicing my returns and compounding my wealth. And I've been doing this for, 20-ish years, over 20 years now. And it's my version of fractional reserve lending, which the banks do. The banks do this 10, 11, 12 times on your money, which is what makes them not as safe of a place to keep your money. That's why FDIC insurance is important, and that's why it's important not have over $250,000 unless you have a sweep account that takes care of that, because banks historically have not been a sound place to store money. I'd rather store it in my whole life policy with a life insurance company where I can borrow against it whenever I want for any reason, and I don't have to pay it back on any timeline or any schedule, and I don't have to declare that I borrowed it to anyone either. It's not part of my, debt service that I have to disclose.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear you say that. I bought a policy for myself 18 years ago and one for my wife 16 years ago. And then I listened to the other people online, and it makes it sound like I made a huge mistake. So I was really happy to see that there's an alternative voice, to those people. So, and I've used it in the past to buy a condo and then sell it and then invest in a PE opportunity. And so far it's been good for me.
Yeah, you're way ahead. Yeah, I mean, just on those two deals, you're way ahead, which is incredible. And to anyone who does not understand why it makes sense, the only thing you need to know, well, first of all, peace of mind because of the death benefit. It's the best tax protection that exists because it compounds and grows tax-free. Tax-free growth, tax-free distribution, tax-free death benefit. Tell me another investment that has that, and then any place you can take the same money and use it in two different places and make two returns, like there's just, as long as you're making good investments, there's just no way that's not sound.
Well, I know we're coming up on time, Joe. I was going to ask one final one, but I think you have one too.
I do too. No, yours may be similar. Yeah. Well, first, thanks for your time, Justin. But yeah, you asked your question, Craig, and if mine's still there, I'll pop it in.
Okay. Sounds great. So dentists in general. So my dad was a dentist, worked for 40-something years, retired about 6 years ago. It was one of the blessings of my life to work with him every day for 20 years. But when he sold his fourth of our practice to a partner that came in and joined us, after all of these years and years and years of building what he built, he made very little money on that exit strategy. And so I think sometimes dentists think, well, my retirement is my practice, or, when I'm able to sell that's going to fund my later years. And I don't think that in the traditional way of dentist selling to students coming out of school has not been a good exit strategy. In the things that you have seen, and obviously those listening to this call know that, we're part of Gen 4 Dental Partners and we are private equity backed, and we're looking for an alternative way to do that. But what have you seen in the people that as far as exiting a practice? Because we have some doctors who might be listening to this and looking for that kind of information?
I think you're probably only going to be able to retire on that money if you have built a practice that can truly scale and operate without you, that is attractive to a private equity group. I mean, you're likely going to get some sort of an earnout anyway, where you're on the hook to work a bit to get paid, to at least get, a sizable portion of that payment, right? You probably get some money up front with some hooks tied into, 4 more years or something. But if your business isn't built for that, then that is likely not an avenue for you, and it's likely not going to be a big outcome. I think if you can build it big enough, if you have multiple practices, or if you know people that have similar practices that you can roll up together, you're probably going to have a larger multiple and a larger exit. And maybe you can retire on that. But I don't think anyone should bank on that. Like, I actually think that's more the exception to the rule. I mean, the percentage of firms being bought up by private equity compared to those that are, kind of going to the younger generation is much smaller. So I don't think it's likely for most people. And I think that if you can diversify some of your assets away from your primary business, that would serve you well, to not just put all your eggs in the one basket that your business has to provide your retirement.
Well, that actually dovetails into my last question, and then we'll quit picking on you, Justin. But those listening today, and hopefully many are inspired to okay, I got to start this. So they want to start creating this financial freedom, say over the next 12 months. What are 3 simple but powerful steps that they can take to get started right now?
I would say, first, if you haven't read my book, read my book. I built it and designed it so that it is easy for a novice, but also pretty technical for someone that's a little more advanced. So I really try to appeal to all types of people. But there's things in there that are more important than just the investment stuff. It's getting clear on who you are, what you want, what's the next chapter of life about. I think it's when you can figure those things out, it becomes easier to find the way to get there, right, through the investments. So I think that's one thing. Second thing, I would say we've got a really cool resource called the Roadmap to Passive Income. And if you go to lifestyleinvestor.com/roadmap, we have a course, or really a session, with my COO, Ryan Casey, that we did at a live event with our community, with our mastermind, where we taught how basically we want to democratize the asset allocation of the billionaire class. What do the wealthiest people do? And then on top of that, how do they create the passive income? And so we have done that. We've actually built a calculator that you can use to then figure out what it would take in investable capital to hit your numbers. And so I think that's probably the second place I would go. And then the third thing, I'd love to do this for your community. We do these strategy sessions with people that want to figure out, how do I get from point A to point B? And what I would love to offer, normally we charge $500 for these sessions to speak with someone on our team. But what I'd love to do for anyone that's interested from your audience, any of you dentists, or anyone that's listening, even if you're not a dentist, that's fine. Anyone that hears about it from this, we'd like to do that call pro bono, so no cost. Just go to lifestyleinvestor.com/consultation. And someone on our team can talk with you about where you are and where you want to go, and maybe what makes the most sense to bridge that gap.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really appreciate that. I mean, there's no excuse now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Can't make it easier than that.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of every podcast episode I do on my show, on the Lifestyle Investor podcast, I always say, what's one step you can take today to move towards financial freedom and to move to a life that is on your terms, one that you desire? So not by default, but a life by design. And I really challenge people to just take a step, because if you keep doing that each day, you're going to be a lot further than you ever thought, a month, a year, 5 years down the road.
Yeah, I'm going to do it, Joe, because I've spent my career, 25 years now, feeling like I can't go on vacation because there's no money coming in, right? I just don't want to think like that or feel like that anymore. So this is going to change my attitude for sure.
And I'm already doing it, Justin. So I'm in, man. I love what you guys are doing, and I love being part of it.
That's awesome. Love it. Well, excited for you to be a formal member of the community when the time's right. And yeah, I'm just excited about both of you being willing to make moves in your lives and to broadcast it to your network so other people can see what you're doing and be inspired by it. I think it's awesome.
Well, amazing. I know you've got a call you got to jump to. We sure appreciate your time today, Justin, and we'll be in touch and keep in contact for sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Bye.